I'm very hyped.
I like how all the girls are wearing pink, all the boys are in blue. There's blue and pink candles. Isn't it cute how they've got like everything kind of like symbolically?
Great creative direction on this one.
True. Oh my god.
Being a dad is one of the great.
I love this guy. I also like the subtle like implication at the beginning, like, oh, my son, the only emotional support he needs is a BB gun. If he's mad, he's gonna go shoot things. Yeah, pretty fucked up. I'm here to point out the men's issues since I know you don't give a
I don't know.
Okay. That's okay.
My brain's clip chimping. I'm already focused on the patriarchal aspects.
Gotcha.
The real question is, what is a woman?
Should we watch this in 2x?
Progress looks like?
Are you already? This is a work of art. You can't watch it in 2x, Farha. You gotta appreciate what's going on here. Are you serious? I wanted to say something before you could tell immediately. Hairstyle. This is gonna be a wacko. She's too happy. Like I don't know. I don't think I'm trusting it.
She doesn't realize this is like a troll thing.
How do I know?
Yeah,
she must know who Matt Walsh is, right? Or maybe not. Actually,
he came in for what is this, therapy, right? Film therapy.
Well, he asked the therapist obviously for an interview, and there's cameras set up so she knows. But now I'm actually curious because I think Matt Walsh blew up a lot more on this documentary, so it might have been that she actually didn't know. Because
isn't it more likely that she'd be interviewed in good faith since the mainstream would agree with her? Like I don't think she'd assume she's being trolled.
Maybe.
I can't really answer that.
Oh no. What do you think about it so far? Are you captivated?
Yeah, I like the way it's filmed. Very playful and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can keep going.
Do you have any thoughts on what you believe a woman is?
No, I was thinking about this yesterday because I was like, I know one of the topics of this is gender identity and like gender theory and stuff. I don't know. No, it's like I really want to understand it, but I don't a ton because I don't have gender dysphoria. So it's weird to me because when I think about like womanhood, I think about it from like a societal perspective. Like I'm not thinking about like an internal identity of it. So I don't know if that just affirms that I don't have gender dysphoria. Because if I did have dysphoria, I would be feeling it. But now it's just like it's the water I swim in. So I'm not like, you know what I'm saying? So I don't understand the conversation about it that much in terms of an internal sense. Does that make sense? What do you think? Do you feel like a man?
Well, I guess Don isn't overthinking it.
I like how you have to already be so bought into the concept where it's like, what is a woman? It's like, oh, here's this explanation. It's like, okay, that's all cringe as f. And then this guy's like, common sense. I got a dick. And it's like, true.
What's your point?
It's not really making a strong argument.
Yeah.
Look at that hair. Just.
It's the same color as yours.
So hers is green a little bit more than mine, but.
Do you think gender is independent from sex?
A little bit, yeah.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah, sure, if you really want me to. The thing that I've explained before is, I think that when we use language, when you use a word, it usually refers to like a family of concepts, okay? So when you say woman, it's not like like when we think of definitions, we think like a word and then a definition, but generally it's like a thing and then it like branches out to like other things and then those things branch out to like other things, typically. So if you're looking at like, when you say the word like...
These pictures never do anything.
Woman, okay? What are things that you think of for woman? Like, we might associate like, I would say like vagina is a pretty big one, right? I would say like pretty, maybe. I would say like dainty, nurture, caretaker, high voice, like stuff like this, right?
Sure.
So maybe we would like do this, right? So whenever you say woman, whenever you utter a phrase, you're like invoking all of these kind of like peripheral concepts a little bit. But not everybody's going to have all of these things. And there might be other terms. So like right over here, I might say like femboy, right? Where that might include like dainty, high voice or something like that, right? So this is, I think when we refer to things in the English language, we generally do it this way. People like to pretend there's a rigid definition like adult, human, female, but we don't use any word like that. Another example would be the one that I always use is like chair, right? What are things we associate with chair? Usually 4 legs, could be 3 legs. Usually a flat thing you could sit on. So we'll say flat, something you sit on, usually materials it's made out of, but like not always, right? So that's generally how we refer to words and concepts, right? So any word, not just woman, is going to refer to like a family of things that we tend to associate with each other. I think we tend to treat sex and gender a little bit differently. So for instance, we might say like women are like, say for instance, like smooth because they shave their body, right? That's not necessarily something that comes from your sex because naturally women grow hair, right? But like the gender expression of female, the gender expression of woman is a little bit different than the sexual expression.
I don't think anyone's arguing that the woman gender is smooth. Like, why don't you base it off things people actually say?
That's exactly what people say. You retarded? How many times do you think?
Smooth?
Yeah, you shave, don't you? Are your legs normally like this?
This is not smooth.
Who do you think has more hair on their legs right now?
Probably me. I'm Indian.
Not even close. I'm Hispanic, okay? We've got way more hair than you. Number one. Number two, so you've never shaved anything in your entire life?
I have to shave like 10 times a day for it to be like a cacti.
Oh, crazy. Do you think Indian men shave 10 times a day? She's gonna say sometimes.
Them do, yeah. No, genuinely, a lot of Indian men have unibrows and they...
Oh, kill me, dude.
Like,
I can't. She's not even trying to engage in good faith.
No, my point was, do women shave? Yes. Do people define women by smoothness and shaving? No.
A little bit, yeah. Shaving is a womanly thing. It's womanly to have long hair, but it's not necessarily your sex to have long hair. It's womanly to have fake wings on your eyes, okay? To make your whatever, like your eyes are gonna fly off your face. That's a womanly thing. I've just
never heard this take.
You've never heard that women are associated with eye makeup? Or lipstick, or smooth skin, like shaving, or long hair, or dresses?
I think if you polled 1,000 people and said, was a woman, no one would say smooth, eyeliner. Like, nobody would say these things unless you're like a psychopath.
No, these are the things that I'm sorry, what would they say then? Go ahead, tell me, Farha.
They probably talk about certain gender expressions. Like
what is a gender expression?
Okay, so something common people will say is that like men gravitate towards jobs that involve things across all societies versus women gravitate towards industries that involve other people and socialization.
So if I go on the street and I go, what do you think is interesting?
That transgresses most cultures.
You're actually brain dead. If I go on the street and I ask somebody, like, what do you think is interesting in man or woman? They would go,
you can't say the makeup
men
thing
tend to gravitate towards things that are they dealing with things, and women tend to gravitate towards things where they're dealing with people.
That's a common answer that I hear.
That's not a common answer.
You're like, people say debate lords. Yes. Versus the makeup thing, you can't say like, you could say, oh, well, in some cultures, the men paint their faces, they put on war paint. So no one's going to be like, oh, women paint their faces. That's like the female gender expression. Maybe in the West, sure. I'm just saying, I don't think that's what people say. Smooth. So do you think gender is a spectrum?
No. Or it's like it's like a bimodal thing. So like, I know the word bi triggers you. I'm so sorry, okay? But like, I would view it as something like this.
Shut the fuck up, you smooth bitch. I'm so sick of your pictures.
This is like male, and this is like female, I would say. Like this. This is what I would view.
That's really great. So basically, based off my understanding of gender, I think the way they map it is like white matter in the brain. So someone who's like woman in sex and then also women in gender has the highest like mean average of like white matter diffusivity in their brain. Then afterwards, I think comes woman sex, male expression, and then after that comes male sex, woman expression, and then after that it comes So you could chart all this based off like white matter in the brain, which I think proves that it is a spectrum, like a line.
Do you understand?
Like they've charted trans brains and then they've shown this.
Okay. Do you just understand? Okay. Now, look at this. Okay. Look at what you've done here. Okay.
What I've done here?
I'm about to blow your mind. Are you ready?
You're gonna draw a.
Yeah. Okay. So what you just did was a more complicated way of doing this. Okay. Over here, the ultra masculine shit is probably like over here, the very male part. So these are like your 6'6" hyper chad, chiseled jaws, broad shoulders. This is your destinies, basically, right?
No, I don't know if that's assumed. I don't know if it's assumed that it correlates. I don't know if it's assumed that the white matter correlates to like the height and these like. I don't know if more white matter means the smoother your legs are, the more eyeliner you're prone to wear. You piece of shit. No, stop drawing cowboy hats. So anyways, I think it's a spectrum, but I was going to ask you next, just because it's a spectrum, do you think gender's malleable?
It probably is to some extent, yeah. But it depends on how you define gender. You even give me a definition for gender.
I guess if you really want an autistic answer, you could define gender
by
the mean diffusivity of white matter in the brain, if you wanted a very clear-cut answer.
Wow,
so if I was,
that's about as good as your definition for a racial slur, so congratulations.
If I was answering Matt Walsh's question, what is a woman, I would say a high mean diffusivity of white matter in the brain.
That's great. I'm going to contact him.
What would he say? That's why it's a perfect answer.
It is. You're going to go on their show and you're going to be there.
He'd cut it out. He'd clip jump the
would.
Yeah.
He'd be like, what is it? And you go, I matter. How do you do it? What's the voice you do? I think it's a matter of white diffuse matter in the brain. Can you do the one voice? Do the TikTok voice.
So why is gender malleable?
Well, it depends on how you define gender.
I just did.
If you're defining it as white shit in the brain, then the only way apparently you could change is by coming inside somebody's ears, okay? I don't know.
No,
if you're saying it's white shit, here's my
you can
guess.
still affect the amount of white matter in the brain. That doesn't mean it's predetermined necessarily at conception. You could argue that.
True.
I'm asking
That's
you.
what
What
I would
are you
argue.
arguing?
That one. That sounds good.
So then it's not malleable.
What I would guess is the structures that exist in your brain are probably responsive and adaptive to things in your environment. So
I would agree.
Wow, good job. So my guess is going to be that there are probably things that happen in development, maybe even nutritionally, and then maybe like in terms of external stimulus, right? Parents and everything, right? And these things might ultimately affect how much white diffusal matter or whatever is in your brain, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think when someone tells you who they are, you should believe them.
Like, why is this guy saying that? Does he think that's actually going to appeal to a conservative? Or does he just not care?
I think the issue is that a lot of people like this spend a lot of time in academia, and they're not really used to dealing with people that haven't bought in
already
to like 20 different axioms. So
but even in academia, like if you're studying this for semesters, your first line of defense wouldn't just be let people take people at face value. Like you'd actually have like even the textbooks would argue what I was talking about like brain scans and stuff like that. So this isn't even an academic response.
Are social sciences, okay? They're probably not talking about brain scans over here. You might guess.
In sociology, I think peripherally they are talking about neuroscience.
And this type of sociology, I'm pretty sure they're running as far away from neuroscience.
This isn't an academia talking point. This is like a social media hippie lovey, like the one you.
Okay, he's a college professor, so he is academia. Okay, you're graduated. You're not in academia anymore.
I just came out of academia like a year ago.
Yeah,
I think
so now you're on the outside.
I think everyone claimed what's going on, and I went to like probably the worst SUNY ever. So I even know that like I don't even think my gender studies professor would say some dumb shit like this.
Oh.
So that's what makes me think he's just looking at for the outliers. Like I'd highly doubt the average like social science professor.
This guy could be like the worst guy they found. That's possible, you know.
I just feel like if you went to like Harvard and asked them,
you get a better answer.
So, do you think so?
I'd hope so, because his answers are pretty bad. Yeah.
I'm just trying to start by getting to the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with that language.
This is what it's like arguing with you.
It's 100%. Really not.
Absolutely.
Why are you concerned with not believing them?
I hate that. They did that when on his Dr. Phil thing. She was like, why do you care so much?
Mm-hmm. Why should we care?
Because if he's trying to investigate truth or just saying like we should care what truth is, how is a good line of defense like, oh, why do you care? Like if someone was going around saying like, oh, flat earth, the earth is flat, and then you're like, no, it's not, and then their defense was like, why do you even care? It's like they're not actually really doing much harm by saying that.
When somebody comes up to you and they say, what's my name? And they say, oh, and you say like, oh, my name is like Farha. And they're like, I don't believe you. Like, do they have a right to do that? Like, or can you just say whatever name you want and you should be taken at face value?
Yes, but I guess his concern is more how this is affecting like children and now in terms of like puberty blockers, transgender athletics. It's not just about like how you gender yourself. I don't think they're just talking about like pronouns and dead names and things like that. I think he's more so talking about like trans people and women in like cis women's spaces and stuff like that. And then children, because the idea is like if a children feels like they have gender dysphoria, it's probably unprofessional and unethical to give them like puberty blockers or medication or like hormones for it, because I think it's like an 80% chance that they'll get over it by adolescence or adulthood.
Okay.
So I feel like that's why he cares, is he doesn't want to do like irreversible damage to people if it doesn't need to be done.
Okay.
Can you confirm or deny or no? Does that go against your morals?
I think in the broadest sense, I agree with what you're saying, but I think in the broadest sense, when we use language, we have to have like a shared understanding of what things mean. Otherwise, society descends necessarily into chaos. If I say like, hey, do you want to go to my apartment later? And then you show up at my apartment and I'm at like Burger King and I'm like, oh, apartment to me means Burger King. Or if like I go to give you a hug and you're like, oh, well, in my language, a hug means we're going to fight to the death and you stab and kill me. Right? That can't be the case. We have to have a shared language. When we say things, they map onto concepts that we can agree with, right? Yeah. Because we can't ever actually truly communicate brain to brain with each other. We have to use words as proxies for everything. So the issue is that he says this, he's being a little bit too philosophically confident, because obviously there's huge epistemic arguments over what is truth and blah, blah, blah. But broadly speaking, he's right that like, when we say like what is a man or what is a woman, we all kind of have to have an agreement on what these things mean. We can't have private definitions for what male and female is, because these are these are shared concepts that we all have. It can't just be that everybody can be anything they want to be. That doesn't make any sense, right?
I guess maybe their rebuttal is like, there wouldn't be much confusion if like a trans woman decides to go by woman, Then
Yeah, but
whereas
the problem is what you said.
they're remapping, and then everyone can then agree by that mapping, right?
But the problem is what you said before is people aren't just mapping those things on to make people feel good about themselves. They're mapping those things on in medical ways or in ways dealing with children or whatever. And now you're running into a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah.
So if somebody's saying things like, oh, like I identify as being, you know, like 2 feet tall, and everybody's like, okay, cool, well, we can agree that you can do that. And then let's say that there's like a ride in a park that you're like 2 feet tall to ride. Well, now everybody's going, that's a weird example. But like you can't, like when people start identifying as weird shit or words that don't mean the things they are, then that'll bleed over into other areas of society where it's like, okay, well, now we have to remap everything, right?
I think that only apply if trans people were saying I identify as having like XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes. But I don't think that's the case.
Well, but the problem is as soon as you start saying I identify as a man or a woman and we're pretending there's like no like fact of the matter over like trans stuff at all, but it's just people identifying as whatever. And then they're trying to say, well, my child can too. It's different for an adult to do it, to say I'm doing it, but for a child to do it and say, well, now they need medical treatment. Well, now we're kind of in a different area. We actually have to figure out if what you're saying like maps onto reality at all. It can't just be a random feeling you have, or it has to map onto more than a personal feeling. It has to map onto some shared definitional truth that we all.
Yeah, I
have.
agree. But I feel like the conversation is usually like very one pole or the other. That's why I was saying like the brain scan thing is interesting.
Sure.
Absolutely. We
I hope it like reaches an inflection point, because right now he's just making a spectacle out of people, and it's like, yeah, we all get it. Like these people don't have much of a logical backbone. Can we get to like what your argument is?
That's the structure. My guess is of this documentary is pretty similar to each type of inflammatory documentary. So first, he poses the question, "What is a woman?" After remarking upon some basic concepts that unite us all. Oh, our children and boys are boys, and they like BB guns, and girls like tiaras, I guess. And now he's going to spend probably half of this, or 30 or 40 or 50 minutes, going to like, well, look at what all these wacky losers on the left say. Look at how crazy they are. This guy had a crazy trans person story. Yeah. This is a crazy. Then he's probably just like, well, now I'm confused. And then the next 30 minutes is probably going to be like, I'm a scientist in a lab coat, or I'm like a normal dude with a healthy family, and this is what it really means.
No,
like,
I know.
Oh, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like that's gonna be the inflection moment. I'm saying like I feel like we're ready for it.
Oh yeah, it's probably gonna come soon. Don't worry. Yeah. And then Jordan Peterson or Candace Owens or some other people. Will be up here.
JP is in this, right?
Oh, he might actually be. Oh, true. Yeah, actually, yeah. Well, I don't know if he's in that, but I've seen clips of Matt Walsh and talking, so he might be, yeah. And then the ending 20 minutes is going to be like, this is why this is important, because they're trying to attack our children with medicine and all that
I know he goes to Africa at one point in this.
Holy shit. Oh, that makes sense, because look, in Africa, they're not confused about traditional gender roles, and the women have their boobs out, and it's going to bring a guy.
If I were to say that I'm a black man,
are you?
Who I am,
what do you think about
that's
that?
Incorrect.
Like comparing like transracialism to transsexualism?
Okay. Male and female are hard because those concepts are very nebulous, and the way that gender plays out in society is very hard to kind of like pinpoint. Usually when we're talking about like, for instance, like age, we're talking about like how many days ago was it since you were born? So it's hard to be like trans age, right? Or when we talk about race, we're literally talking about like phenotypical characteristics or like ethnic lineage. So it's hard to say I identify as something different, right? Like I probably couldn't identify as Ugandan because I don't look at it, I don't have the phenotype or the genotype. I don't have the ethnic lineage, right? So it's kind of a meaningless statement.
Dr. Grossman.
Oh, you can tell by that face.
That what?
She's about to bring the house down on these crazy. Oh my God, I can feel the conservative coming from her. Oh my God, are you ready? Do you see how he's like taking like the student, the learning posture? Look, now this way, lady speaking facts. So now he's like, he's like really considering. Finally a straight shooter. God, I love that shot. It's just Matt Walsh, the badass against the world, fighting against BLM and trans. Yeah, it basically, yeah. There it is. Yeah. God, amazing.
Let's go, girls.
Did you follow Leah Thomas?
Slightly. So a trans female swimmer who won what? Like a college thing or like a national?
I think she said, was it an NCAA record? Does anybody know? I remember she said it, but she got first in her competition, and people were obviously super mad. This sparked like the whole trans debates over the past like 1 or 2 years. Apparently the record got beaten this year. People that are transitioning post-puberty probably shouldn't be competing with people that are cisgender. Yeah. I understand that it's like just a documentary, but like this, they're not really making an argument, right? Like you could theoretically show me 50 trans athletes winning things, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're having like an outstanding performance, like with respect to their demographics. Right.
I think they're not actually.
I don't know if they are or not, but I'm just saying that whether they are, this isn't a compelling argument. It just looks good, I guess.
I don't know if it's true, but I saw something that said that, like they're not even coming close to overtaking women's sports. But I don't know if that's a compelling argument either. Is this the owner of the spa or just like a worker?
I think it's his own manager, but this is like a huge thing that blew up like several years ago. Oh yeah. But I think the trans person that was going around was actually like Am I wrong, or were they like a registered sex offender? It was like pretty bad.
Wait, can you go back? I want to read what their sign said. Men could get pregnant. We wouldn't be having this combo. So this is funny because this is like technically a transphobic argument, but then he's asking them this, and they're scared of being.
Oh, true, because men can get pregnant.
So you think that at least be slightly turfy, but I don't think they will be.
They're probably because they're not thinking about it. Yeah, we hadn't gotten that advanced yet on the trans. This was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe.
No. But my point is, like, this was in the trailer, this scene, I think, and whatever, play it.
Yeah.
So men can get pregnant.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to confront people with the sign that said if men could get pregnant, this wouldn't be an issue.
It's all one monolith.
Yeah,
he doesn't
I know.
have to go back to them.
Well, but it would be funny for them particularly.
Maybe he will.
Because maybe they would throw away the sign. He'd be like, "Can I burn this sign?" Oh my God, the Africa section.
Someone is neither. There's something.
Okay,
else
can I just say, I don't know if they've been prepped at all, but it sounds like these guys have English is rough for them, and they don't all speak
but
English.
they know the word non-binary.
But he's able to ascertain what non-binary means. That's pretty impressive. Maybe I'm like elitist in language or whatever, but I wouldn't expect like Spanish speaker down here in Miami that speaks very little English. But like, can you tell me what non-binary gender means? Like, no way.
Yeah.
That's like, but nice, good for him, I guess. One thing that I think is very, very, very funny here, and obviously the conservatives will never see it this way, is prior to this explanation of the penis vagina thing, the answers, this is actually incredibly interesting, I think. The answers that these tribes people were giving, they were saying in a more rudimentary way the exact same things that all the crazy SJWs were saying earlier. Because when Matt was asking, like, what is a man and what is a woman, they weren't saying adult human female XYXX chromosomes. They were saying like, well, a man is somebody that generally has these roles. He provides and he hunts. A woman is somebody that generally has these roles. They were actually giving the same answer as the gender studies professors. They were just saying in like a more fundamental way, which I think is like very funny kind of, but yeah.
When this came out, I forget which interview, but he was saying he did this just so like liberal white like gender theorists couldn't say anything because he thought they'd be too scared to be called racist by like undermining what they're saying.
He's actually right.
Yeah.
Because that's why liberals or progressives will like never call out Islam or black people or any people of
No
color.
comment.
Good. You don't have to. I will say something that's very frustrating for my history. You could probably go back and make a compilation. I swear to God, I did this with like, I'm pretty sure I did this with Lawrence Southern. I think I did this with Nick Fuentes.
Okay, first of all, I didn't prove his point. That was a joke because we've talked about the Islam stuff. Sorry. They were saying I was proving your point.
Yeah, but you didn't do the 3,
No,
so
you're
they
right.
didn't tell you were joking. Sorry.
It was more for you.
Oh.
I forgot I have to now do inside jokes with each of you.
Oh, crazy. Because I thought it was so obvious when you were joking before. But now you're saying maybe it's actually kind of confusing.
It was more for you.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know you were joking either, but... A long time ago, I would argue with conservatives all the time. And there were 2 things that I would say constantly. One big thing was I would keep saying, like, it sounds like you just want Sharia law. You just want Sharia law. You want to be able to tell one what to wear. You want to be able to do like extra governmental punishments for sin, like these. And they'd always be like, no, I don't want Sharia. Islam, Muslims, we don't do that shit. We're Christians, blah, 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 blah. And now, like 6 or 7 years later, now all these same losers are unironically simping for Islam. And they're unironically like, oh yeah, we actually do want Sharia. And I used to make jokes in the past too. Fuentes was the first prominent, like far right person I found picking up on this, where I would say, like, it sounds like you guys want like really... Like, for as much as you guys are like shitting on the West and everything, or you guys shit on poor people and shit on like Africa or whatever, it sounds like you would actually like a lot of those cultures because they're incredibly traditionally conservative in terms of like family roles and values and everything. And they'd always like shit on them and we don't want to be those people and eat dirt and blah, blah, blah. But now you literally have like Matt Walsh here smiling like, oh, these like primitive Africans, even they know gender and they're so much more down to earth than the crazy white people in the West.
He didn't say primitive.
No, but that's obviously what they're going for here, okay? Is people walking around, okay?
I think that's kind of his point, is that like if the Western liberal rebuttal would be like, oh, well, we're a more advanced society. It's like, you can't say that, but also being like a mainstream Western liberal, because then you'll be called like what you're... Then they'll assume they're saying what you just said, which is primitive, which they can't say. So I think that's why he did this.
A little bit. That's probably a part of it, but I think a bigger part of it is just to show, because the conservative mindset is that the West is like kind of ran away from reality. And let's go to like some basic people and figure out like what is actually happening. It's like, well, these are as basic as it gets. Like, and they know like what a man and a woman is. Like, we've lost our way, I think, is like the general point of like the conservative thing, you know?
Wait, so you really think it's the same group of people who were like the ones who were against Islam because they oppressed women and gays, who are the same people who are now like the red pillars?
Yes.
Like, you think Sneeko was anti... Oh, he was, right?
Yeah, wasn't he like wasn't he an atheist? Am I wrong on that?
You told me he offended the Muslim community, and then he went on like an apology
Initially,
tour.
yeah, because he got backlash and shit.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it was like the same. I'm pretty sure if you look at some of those far right people a long time ago, like the same people on Twitter accounts. I think the only big conservative I follow, she doesn't tweet as much anymore, but Lauren would like tweet shit like, oh, like these people have it figured out, or maybe these people have a good point or whatever. I bet if you go through and follow other older conservative accounts, you could find it. But the general thought or a lot of these people is that like, oh, maybe these like more. Look at all the people right now they're talking about picking up a wife in like Eastern Europe.
Yeah, but I don't see
Right.
it as the same, because same way like Fresh and Fit have beef with like Ben Shapiro, I feel like there's the traditional conservatives who are still anti-Islam, and then there's this like new matrixy like pro-Islam people, and they don't like, I don't think Ben Shapiro and his audience's opinions have changed in a more pro-Islam direction, the traditional conservatives.
Maybe not pro-Islam, but I'm trying to think if I hear Ben Shapiro ever talk about how like the East hasn't lost its way. Like I wonder.
They talk about like the West demonizing masculinity and stuff like that, so maybe that's like the contrapositive of it. So maybe
That's Sneako's favorite movie right there.
The youngest patient
No,
I've
12.
done vaginoplasty.
Guess how old? I've got a real one in my head. You guess.
5.
Okay, that's your guess?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Mine is, I'm gonna say 15.
Age 16.
This 14-year-old girl has osteoporosis. That's
Who's right? Are puberty blockers reversible or not? My understanding is any research on puberty blockers is pretty in its infancy. I don't think anybody can say for sure what the long-term effects are. They're probably slight, but they could be moderate to severe. But there's anybody that's telling you right now that we have like really good evidence for long-term effects of puberty blockers on children is lying to you. That's just not true. We don't have that evidence yet. So it's probably something that if you want to study it, you still need to study it. But there is no like, oh, for sure, like these are absolutely A-okay. Like that's not true.
I thought they've already proven that it has at least effects on like bones and osteoporosis and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like everything has effects on bones. Okay.
I heard something like you'll start getting, your body will start like shutting down like 10 years earlier than if you don't get them, like in your 50s versus your 60s. You'll start, I forget which disease, there's like,
I have no idea.
yeah,
Sorry.
but they did prove that, whatever it is I'm referring to.
I'm sure they did. This is a dad who's apparently their kid was going to be put on puberty blockers, and I think he tried to take his kid away.
2000.
Is this true? I don't know. You'd have to go read the story. The problem is that like every time you look at these stories, there's always like other shit going on that they never actually put in. So I'm not sure. I mean, if that is what happened, it sounds kind of big ass. Oh shit! The big guns have rolled in.
Because you don't affirm if you're a therapist.
Like, what do you think about that? Like, some people think healthcare and medical services should be more like teaching, like it should be like the point is to propel well-being and an objective standard. Some people think it's more like a service, a commodity, like you just do what's going to give the person satisfaction. But some people are like, no, who cares about their satisfaction? It's about their like health and well-being.
No, that's true. You shouldn't affirm people, especially in therapy. Like therapy is oftentimes about like what is the most compassionate way to set up a series of confrontations to convince somebody to change their behavior, kind of, right? Like if you're going to a therapist because you think something is wrong, you shouldn't just be going to them to get affirmation of whatever things you believe in. Now, affirmation,
good,
yeah, it could be part of a process towards changing your behavior eventually. So like, for instance, if you have like borderline, the first step oftentimes in like dealing with borderline people is usually some form of like radical acceptance of feelings and perceptions of the world before you move on to like change your behaviors. But the relentless affirmation is super damaging to people's minds. There is some pressure though. People pretend this is like new to therapists, but it's not actually. Doctors have the same pressure. There is pressure to prescribe people what they want because people will shop for therapists, just like people shop for doctors. Go to a doctor, complain you have pain. They don't prescribe anything. You go to a new doctor, right? People do shit like that, probably with therapists as well. I like how the Daily Wire is built like their own little, you don't like Marvel movies, do you? Have you ever heard of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Heard of it.
It's cool because like in a movie with like a Marvel hero, like another Marvel hero might come in and you're like, whoa.
That's like a crossover.
Yeah, but then now for the Daily Wire, they can do this. Like, okay, we're shooting a documentary with one of our talent,
And then
Matt
he
Walsh.
walks in like some giant superhero.
Yeah, and then we get to bring in Jordan Peterson, who's also part of the Daily Wire. I think he was at the time of this documentary. It's like a really, really, really good media strategy. You said Candace Owens did one of these? Mm-hmm. I bet she's got in her film, she's probably got like some other Daily Wire figure intersecting in it.
I wonder who the cameo will be in that one.
Maybe, yeah.
But it's like weird because what you're saying, okay, let's say I wanted to go to a doctor to get a heart surgery for no reason, and they're not going to say yes just because they're like, oh, well, then she can go buy it from someone else, right?
Yeah.
So then why is it for this stuff they would do it just so you don't go to a competitor?
Their issues relating to the mind are a bit more challenging because generally generally you can do things medically to verify if somebody has an underlying condition or not sometimes. Like I can actually run a scan. Like you said you have high blood pressure, let's take your blood pressure. You said you feel like you're diabetic, let's test your blood sugar. But like for issues of the mind, you have to ask a series of questions to try to ascertain the mental state of a person, right? It's also difficult because like people can like kind of like mind f- themselves into thinking they have certain things. Like I know enough about like ADHD and autism and probably general anxiety that like if I were to go and take a test, I could probably test for any of them because I know like what they're looking for, right? I couldn't fake like an X-ray for cancer, right? Like I know the symptoms of like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but I couldn't go and fake that on an MRI, right? I either have it or I don't. So like that is another thing that adds a level of complexity. I would say that like something that I've said before. If I was a therapist and somebody came in for like a first session and they started rattling off psych terms, I would just never take that patient. I was like, bye. If someone comes in and they're like, yeah, I think that I have like, I'm worried I have ADHD. And you're like, oh, well, let's talk. Like, what's your day-to-day experience? And they're like, well, I have a lot of executive function disorder. And it's like, okay, get the fuck out of my office. Like, I see you've read the Wikipedia, you've memorized it. But like, yeah. So like at that point, like their mind could get so poisoned that they might start bullshitting themselves into thinking they have what they have, yeah.
What is the word for that?
I think there's a different word. There's one word called psychosomatic, which is where you can actually start to exhibit physical symptoms if you mind fuck yourself enough into believing it.
Yeah, like I think if you tell someone over and over that they have cancer and certain symptoms, you'll like exhibit it.
Yeah, that would be a psychosomatic thing. Oh, I think for the mind, if you bullshit yourself for mental stuff, I think it's called psychogenic. Hold on, I'm sorry. The last time I gave you new words, you made me look them up because you thought I was lying to you. So let me...
You misuse words like
no, I don't. Psychogenic is having a psychological origin or cause rather than a physical one. So psychogenic might mean the same thing as psychosomatic. Of an illness or other condition caused or aggravated by mental factors such as internal conflict or stress. Psychosomatic versus psychogenic. Psychogenic is a broader category than psychosomatic in that it can include the hysterical form where there is no physiological change in peripheral tissues, as well as the psychosomatic form where there is some physiological alteration. So psychogenic is only relating to the mind. So I was correct, because I generally am when I'm defining terms. Yeah.
So you know how some people say there's a trend of people misdiagnosing themselves with autism? Do you think that could be psychogenic? Like, do you think you could actually manifest symptoms of something like autism? Or do you think...
I think there's two actually horrible things. I think you can manifest symptoms of autism. I absolutely think you can. And I also think that if you have autism, I think you can make it worse.
By like just...
Like this is complete bullshit. I'm completely inventing this. But like, if you're somebody with mild autism and you kind of realize that something is off growing up, I bet you can put in a lot of work. Like there's a lot of, back in my day, we had a diagnosis called Asperger's. Have you ever heard of that? It's very, very, very mild autism related to social cues. There are a lot of people with Asperger's that grew up and they sound normal. You wouldn't even know it, right? But that's because they've done so well at adapting. But I'm worried that like today, you might learn that you have like mild autism and then you develop like super autism because you're like, and somebody's like, what are you doing? And you're like, I don't know, I've got autism. So I just like do this sometimes. Yeah. And it's like, you're doing it. You're acting like, it's not autism. You're being a retard. That's
like last year when everyone was saying people were gaining tics from TikTok or whatever. Do you know what
I'm talking about? Or how many people on TikTok apparently have DID and shit,
What I would say is that...
I'm sorry. Okay. For as much as I can hate Jordan Peterson, when he's talking about psychology, he's usually fairly insightful.
That's what I was saying the other day. It's like when he's not talking about fucking
politics
body positivity and stuff, like he's actually super intelligent. Like I see the appeal.
If they were to put different music and put him earlier in the video and give him blue hair, his answer right now sounds crazy. Could you imagine the lady if he's like, well, what about like when we talk about like gender and temperament? And she was like, oh, well, I don't even need gender. Yeah. Like she would look insane. But when it's coming from Jordan Peterson in a suit and it's a man and they've got the music and I said this part of the documentary.
And they don't have Matt react. I was thinking that when he first walked in, like if you showed this man without any context from even just the way he speaks,
he would look like a crazy SJW.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gender, that's a whole different complicated thing. And I don't even need it when I'm talking about it. Yeah. But because of where it's presented, now it looks like, whoa, my God, he's like preaching. They also
bring in probably like arguably the most like sophisticated speaker on the topic in their favor, but then for the other ones, I feel like they're purposely bringing in kooky. Like I wish they brought in someone to represent the other side better.
Like Hassan.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but or like maybe not Sam Cedar, but like yeah. No, you're all right because it's like here we have like gender studies professor 1, random trans lady surgeon 2, random psychologist 3, and Jordan Peterson to like debate them all. And it's like, okay, dude, like, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
What do we even need the word gender for?
Well, I don't need it.
So like this would sound crazy.
That's what I was just
This would
thinking.
sound crazy if remember the guy
like, if he
who was
said
sitting
this-
like this and he was talking like this, he's like, well, 1 in 10 women can have a masculine temperament. He would sound crazy.
Or if they
but
brought Jordan Peterson to Africa to the tribe to say all this.
Oh,
Like, they'd have the
true!
same reaction.
yeah, what would you say in your tribe in Niobe
Yeah.
or whatever?
If they quoted Jordan Peterson
Yeah,
about
if
him
you
talking
said
about
1 in 10
lobsters,
men-
if they quoted his lobster
True.
shit in Africa.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
No.
How much you want to bet that if she has like social media, it's like all about trans people? Like that's the only thing she talks about.
Should we check?
Any
Does anybody know who she is or? Wife, mother, therapist, sex and gender. Career, gender therapist, deep concerns with gender affirming care. And that's like her most recent tweet 4 hours ago. This is a 3-year-old documentary, right? 3 years old. We have to continue hearing their stories. Brave. One thing that's weird to me about trans people, this is true of pro-trans people and anti-trans people, right?
Wait, now she's retweeting Elon Musk.
Because Elon Musk's like the hero to all the trans hater people or whatever, because he's a weird guy. In this podcast, we continue to discuss and explore the implications of dude, I get bored when I'm on like when I have to talk about like a topic for like 3 months, okay?
Red pill,
Yeah, Jesus Christ. Do you think body count is like it makes me these people can go years and their whole life is talking about like the same shit. Hold on, let me check how old this documentary is. I'm sorry. Okay, it might be a year old. My bad. Not. So this is probably filmed
Someone
like.
said, "Isn't this her literal line of work? Of course she'd be talking about this."
Well, is it her line of work only criticizing trans people? There's not like there's other things in sex to talk about, isn't there? Okay, so these were probably filmed about 1.5 years ago, would be my guess. Not 3 years ago. Probably about 1.5 years ago. Maybe 2 years ago.
See, is that only
Don't you
experts
Okay, I don't know
who
shit
tell
about anything for directing. Okay, but like, shouldn't something be happening if you're doing like the shot reaction shot?
That's what I was saying. It worked if he was cringe reacting, but if he's agreeing,
or even if he's agreeing, he
Or
can
if he's,
like he can at least like
nod.
nod. Yeah, but it's just like his face.
it's just nothing. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. This whole thing
see.
is kind of just a vanity project for him.
I wonder if they just shoot B-roll. We're like, just sit here and we're gonna record you for like 2 minutes, and then we're gonna have her
Yeah.
record, and we're just gonna like intersperse shots of you just like.
Do they
it
use the
reminds
same
me.
clip over and over?
I don't know. It reminds me of that Brain Rot Politics clip where I'm like about to destroy Sneak or whatever, and then they zoom in on that one girl
the
that
girl
was off the perk.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a troll or not. Wait, you know it's bad when the main arguments are about the acting in a documentary. Okay. Firstly, in terms of it being an educational documentary, this is very, very, very loose on the education and the facts, okay? This is something that is presented almost purely as an aesthetic project. If you think anything different, you're deluding yourself, okay? So of course, I'm gonna talk about the aesthetics of the presentation. It's an 1.5 hours long to say essentially like 4 tweets worth of like, trans people are attention seeking, don't hurt children, and all of it is gay shit, okay? That's like this entire documentary, and I'm gonna prove it by asking a bunch of randos in the street if they agree with it. So don't sit here and be like, why aren't you talking about the substance of the documentary? Because there is hardly any substance. So of course I'm gonna talk a little bit about the aesthetic of it, okay? Jesus.
kids that are identifying as animals.
Do you know anything about the origin of this story? This is so funny, okay? I don't know the absolute origin, but I know where it blew up. I think Joe Rogan heard about it on like an email, or a friend told him this. So Joe Rogan is on his show, and Joe Rogan says in a school somewhere, there are kids identifying as cats and they're bringing in litter boxes for them to pee in. After Joe Rogan says that in his show, all over the country, people are saying like, oh yeah, all over the country, there are schools that are bringing litter boxes for kids to be in. It blows up, and every school apparently in the country is doing this. And then when people try to figure out, it hasn't happened anywhere. Never. So just from Joe Rogan saying this one thing, that's probably where this lady is getting this cat thing on. Joe Rogan says this one thing, and all of a sudden, spinning into existence in all these people's minds are like people like, oh yeah, I think I heard this at a school happening. I heard this, and now everybody in there, oh, it happened in Seattle, it happened in Miami, it's happening in Kansas, it's happening like everywhere. Yeah, and it's all complete
Why
total
did he
bullshit.
say it? Did he fall for like a troll tweet, or like what's the actual origin?
I think it was just like a friend told him, and that friend either made it up or heard some
okay.
dumb shit on 4chan or whatever.
I am a wolf theorian and a member of the furry fandom.
Okay.
This was like one of the most straightforward, reasonable people he's talked to so far. They answer pretty.
He's just banking on the fact that people find their
Yeah,
so eccentric.
I know. They do,
Yeah.
but it is essential. But it's funny that they're like relatively straightforward. Like, would you talk to a wolf? And they're like, well, no, but I can like tell when a wolf is mad. I'm not gonna talk to it like I'm talking to you. And he's like, okay, would you bark for me? And they're like, no. That's funny to me.
I go by Teacher Fambrini.
I'm gonna
as
be
a
totally
version.
honest. If my kid had a teacher like this, I would not be comfortable with it. I'd be like, Nathan, we're buying a different house, okay? You're transferring.
They're different. They're not sure who they are.
I think this description is really accurate. I think that there are a lot of people online. I think that if you grow up as a teenager, there's a lot of like weird shit that you struggle with, and I think it is easy to find a cool community to join.
Yeah.
I think that this is something I've talked about a lot before. One thing that's really hard with kids is they have a lot of voice and a lot of power that they shouldn't on social media today. Mm-hmm. Because I think historically, kids are supposed to be weird when they're growing up. When you're in high school, you're supposed to be like a goth kitten with chains, and you get a secret tattoo, and you have clothes that you dress when you leave the house that your parents don't see you leaving, and you look like a punk, and you like scene kids, scene girls, goth girls, alt kids, like all of that shit. You should be when you're a kid. It's weird. And it's fine, but it's part of your like exploratory growing stage. But the problem is that like when you grow up, you can look at that and you can go like, yeah, we did like weird dumb shit as kids, because you're like acting out, you're growing up, you're discovering yourself, you're growing into yourself, right? Sometimes you're rebelling, whatever. But the problem is that now that exploratory phase has been named trans, and it's given way more legitimacy than it should be. Yeah. Now, rather than it being like, because if you were to tell like a 19-year-old that says, oh, actually, I identify as a non-binary Zer, and sometimes I have DID, and you're like, okay, you'll grow out of it. You're like an evil Hitler now. You can't say that anymore. Whereas if you got like a 21-year-old girl and she's like, I'm never going to have kids, and I'm only going to have 10 cats and 3 girlfriends, and I hate men, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get 20 million times. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll see what you feel like in 2 years. Yeah. Like you can say that. You're not being like any kind of phobia, you know? That's like that's something that because it's all wrapped up in the trans stuff, it's very, very, very hard to actually like critically engage with any of it, because you're just like written off as transphobic, and that's really irritating.
I'll say the benefit though, like in regards to that, about like propagating non-binary stuff over just like pure trans one pull the other, is like these people, I'm guessing they're seeking out surgery a lot less. They're more so experimenting with like their hair and their style and all these things, so it's more likely they'll actually grow out of it. That's
true. It's probably better for like do you know what like AFAB and AMAB means?
Like female assigned at birth.
Yeah, all the AFABs in colleges that are identifying as non-binary, in my opinion, even though it's annoying that it's after with trans stuff, it's probably okay, because if you identify as non-binary, like what are you doing? You're wearing like a chest binding, and then you get and then like the pronouns, like which you can pronouns and a pixie cut for your hair, and it's like, okay, fine, whatever, right? But you're not doing like irreparable harm to your body or like
that's why I feel like it's fine to like encourage exploration of style. If pronouns help you explore that style, I don't think there's anything malicious about that. I don't think that should be like combined, elided with like the surgery stuff. Yeah, the only problem is now you've kind of like destroyed the space for actual trans people, because this was or you can regard it as a different space. No, you absolutely can't, because then you are kind of like writing off the non-binaries as not really trans, and they want to be trans because that's like the cool oppressed tag to be. Well, it depends how you define trans. If you define trans from like going one pull the other, then I don't think it's literally them. The way that it's supposed to be is trans and cis. So you've got cis people, and then everybody else is trans. So non-binary, trans men, trans women are all like the same type of thing. When I solicited emails from other trans people like a year or two ago, this is the thing that I got a lot, is that like a lot of trans people, like that were trans men or trans women, that were looking for help with like medication, maybe surgery, transitioning. All of the college groups that they wanted to join were like 98% white AFABs that were all like non-binaries, and they feel like they didn't have a space for them to like explore actual trans. I wonder if that's just because it's like relatively new non-binary stuff. Same way like bi men in the past have just been seen as gay, but now that like people can like delineate between it, now they're less likely to just be like, oh, I'm just gay. So I wonder if eventually they won't. You know, a little bit, yeah. There's nothing. I understand that, but I think that like the bi thing, so like the explosion of people like identifying as bi, I think that's fine because it doesn't have a big effect. But like the issue with the trans stuff is that like the hormones and stuff for kids. That's what makes it so scary. Like if like a whole bunch of 16-year-olds were all of a sudden like, I'm bi instead of trans, it's like, okay, whatever, who cares? Yeah. But like if you're like, I'm trans and I need drugs, it's like, oof, that gets like a lot crazier, I think, right?
15-year-old was charged on 2 separate occasions.
Oh, this is the one story that they have. This was legitimately, I believe, somebody can tell me, this was legitimately fucked up. There was a kid that tried to molest a kid in the bathroom, and I think they transferred the kid, but the principal covered it up, I think. This was legitimately fucked up, but it wasn't really a trans thing. The issue here was that like the principal was like covering up like a kid doing weird things in the bathroom to people, and they transferred the kid, and I think they hit the record. I think that's what happened here. But this is like the one case that they can like fall back on or whatever. But it was like 15-year-old kid doing dumb shit.
But you tried not to allow it, yet here I am.
Can I just, as a real quick thing, there's nothing wrong with a school board saying only local residents can speak, right? Like if a school board wanted to talk about their school district in like Spokane or some shit, and I'm like, I'm gonna go talk there instead. It's like, homie, you don't live here. You're a random e-celeb or a random celeb. Why the fuck would you come and talk to our district about our school shit? It's okay to lock it down to just residents. It's kind of weird that he's like acting like it's like some huge trampling of free speech. But
Is he? I thought he was just making a joke that he's like state fluid. Did he say it's like?
Well, no. The thing is that they were going to have a school board meeting in Loudoun about this issue that came up, but they were only letting residents attend the meeting. So he leased out somebody's basement so that he's technically a resident, so that he could come and be at this,
Well, can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't.
Days after this episode aired on the Dr. Phil show, the other members of the panel complained they were emotionally damaged by the conversation. In response, CBS and Hulu removed the episode.
They said they had nightmares
from their
according to
platforms.
Matt Walsh about Matt Walsh.
Nightmares. Is he going to actually ask Jordan Peterson by the end of this, what is a woman? Is he going to answer? Do you know? He'll be pretty disappointed if they got the big guns here and he doesn't actually answer that question.
I doubt he'll let JP get the last word. I feel like Matt wants to do that.
Yeah, but then he could have the answer to that and then Matt could talk.
I doubt he'll have JP give an answer because Matt wants to do like the very succinct, like edgy, like an adult human female, and JP is going to give like a drawn out answer that's more like.
Why not? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, which is why it'd be funny if he doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Up to 90%.
Okay, hold on. That's a really bad number. 90% of children that go through puberty will be happy with it? That's a really big number for unhappy with puberty. 10%? You'd think she would have said like 99%, right? That's a really low number for like 90% are totally fine with it. That's 1 out of 10 kids. But
True. Am I wrong? I thought she meant 90% of kids who...
with gender dysphoria?
Yeah.
Oh, that might be it, maybe.
It's a curious question, but I...
How is this guy a professor?
I don't know if that's a pone because...
Is it a what?
I don't know if that's like a pone.
What does pone mean? That word predates you. You're not allowed to use... If you're not allowed to say the N word, you're definitely not allowed to say pone, okay? So you don't know if that's an own you mean. Go ahead.
Because even if you ask someone like, okay, what does it mean to be black? What does it mean to be white? It's like, it's still like a... It's kind of what you were saying about the... What is that fable? It's like cut off the head, but you can without cutting off the neck, but that doesn't mean there's no definition.
What are you talking about?
That thing you were telling me about.
Who's cutting off whose head?
You know what I'm talking about.
The Loki's wager thing.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. My point is, like, wouldn't a lot of people not be able to define race? Isn't that kind of like when you're arguing with Nick Fuentes, what you say? That you can't, like, delineate what's white and what's not.
I think usually what I would fight with him, it's over the what is white or what is American culture sometimes. But I'm usually fighting against people that are pretending they have a very rigid definition of it. I don't think they do. I think it's a lot more nebulous than that. That's usually what I push against. Which is kind of the same here. People are like, oh, what is a woman? I know exactly. It's like, well, it's complicated.
Yeah, I guess my point is just that I think a lot of people have a nebulous definition for a lot of races.
For a lot of everything, kind of, right?
Mostly race and gender.
Okay, what's something that people don't have a nebulous definition of? Go ahead, Farha.
I would say a lot of things that aren't based on identity.
Yeah, go ahead and name something.
Objects.
Like what object?
We're gonna do the thing.
Which thing?
We're gonna be like, define this, and I give a
go ahead.
You go, oh well, you can include this in this.
Oh, so you
saw
admit
you did
that,
this with the
yeah,
lab.
true,
I'm not
That's
not
good.
getting your debate sloppy seconds.
Okay.
Press play.
What is a woman?
What is a woman?
Marry one and find out.
Like, why does his answer get presented as the
That's
more
what I'm
reasonable one?
saying.
That's a ridiculous. He gave the worst
that's a
answer.
variation of the whole I can't answer. A woman has to answer.
He
did
gave
the
like
same
the
thing.
worst one of all of them. He didn't even try. That one, the really obnoxious smiling lady in the very beginning, probably gave like the best answer. Like, it varies across culture. She could have given some examples, but like, I just think it's funny that.
Yeah.
What is a woman?
I love how she's in the kitchen wearing some
of course.
very conservative thing, full makeup done, of course, making food for the kids in the family. Like, what better? God, if only she was
Steven
pregnant, it would just be.
Yeah, dream girl.
Absolutely.
Okay.
An adult human female.
Here's another thing I don't like. They make fun of people using woman to describe woman. What is a woman? Well, something that is a woman. What is a woman? Okay, they said over and again. Okay, well, what is a woman? A female. And that's like oh my God. But it's like it's just as tautological, right? What is a woman? A female. That doesn't get you any closer to the actual answer. You're using a synonym, literally.
I don't think it's a synonym because they're arguing that gender is distinct from sex. He's saying it's not, and he's saying sex can be proven based off like genetics. But gender can't.
I
so
guess, but
it's not
he didn't spend
tautological.
any other part of the documentary.
What I hate is the implication. She's like, a woman is an adult human female who needs help opening this jar. He just had to put it in there to show like
that's because he's a strong
trans
man.
people don't exist, and also women are weak. Like he has
True.
to just throw that in there.
He didn't spend any of the documentary building towards that argument though, and even the experts that he brought in didn't give that answer. There's an answer from his wife.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson couldn't even say
Yeah,
it.
Jordan Peterson didn't get an answer. And he was like the big guns expert that was brought in.
See how she smiles at him lovingly like a grateful woman?
No, it was more like my goofy husband. He's always on these little intellectual adventures when like the real answers are right at home.